Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to Dream Career Talk Show. We are on episode number 39 of Dream Career Talk Show. Dream Career Talk Show is about building your dream career, which is much beyond getting a job. Here on this show, we are going to have industry experts from various domains who will be sharing their knowledge, their experiences, their challenges, their failures, and success so that it can help others in their career journey. This show is to help corporate professionals expand their context, get clarity, direction, hope, inspiration, and of course, the right steps to build their dream career. After finishing engineering, many students start in the field of networking. Computer networking, especially when it is talked about computer networks, a lot of people have it as a synonym called Cisco networking. Now, people get started with CCNA and then they think, what next? And then the common path for most of them is do CCNP. And then the next path for them is do CCNA, do CCIE, right? These are some of the top certifications. And what next? Some people get lost after that and they start thinking, how do I grow in my career? So, what if someone wants to understand the entire network infrastructure? What if someone wants to understand the roadmap, the career roadmap in the network infrastructure field? Can you get into networking as a network design engineer, as a network automation engineer, as a network architect? How do you get into these kind of fields? How the digital space is today shaping up and how the network world is changing? To understand and learn more about the career roadmap in the field of computer networks, we have our today's guest, Muddasir Khan, who has spent close to a decade and a half in the field of networking. Muddasir has worked in various roles in some of the top companies like Microland, Cisco, Amazon, and he has worked across the globe with clients across the globe, and he has gained immense knowledge. He has certified in CCIE, which is one of the prestigious certification of Cisco, and he's also JNCIP certified and also AWS SAA certified. He's very passionate about networking, and I'm very glad to have him here today. Mudassir, happy and excited to have you on Dream Career Talk Show today. Welcome.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your kind words. Thank you for having me.
Great. So let's get started with your career journey because I know you from about a decade now, and your career journey has always been an inspiring one for me, and I'm sure like it's going to inspire a lot of people who are going to watch us today. So can we get started with how did you start your career journey?
Sure. So, my life revolves around stories. So, you'll hear a lot of stories during this conversation. My first story is how I got a job in the first place into IT. I was planning for engineering after finishing my diploma in mechanical engineering in Bangalore, and then I was in the bus stand at the time, and there were two buses. One was going to the center, which was teaching me engineering, cracking the engineering test, and the other bus was heading towards this interview that Wipro was taking for freshers. And I took the second bus. I had the resume folded up in my bag, just as standby. Took the bus, went into there, cracked the rounds. Communication helped. That's the only skill that I had during the time, and then got into Wipro, and then got transferred after 3 months of training in Bangalore. Got transferred to Pune in Maharashtra, and I went there, worked for about a year and 10 months in service desk. Whereas all I was doing at that time was working in Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. And then, but I was very passionate about networking because that was the only thing that I was able to understand in the IT space. Cracked about 7 to 8 interviews to get into a technical team in Wipro, and then move from there into a network engineering team. So that 1 year of 10 months uh, is actually what shaped my career, because the amount of effort that I put in those year and 10 months is actually still with me. That knowledge that I gained there.
Great. And this is interesting. You started with a very good story here. Two roads, two buses, and then you get into one bus which takes you to to Wipro, right? Now, what had you done before you entered into Wipro? Were you like a graduate or you had done your diploma? What was that?
All I wanted to do in life was make money. All I wanted to do was get a job. So I did not study a lot. I did my 10th and went into diploma in mechanical engineering for 3 years. So I did not go to college, a proper college. I just did my diploma after 10th in mechanical engineering. My specialization was heat, power, and technology, which was basically to do with air conditioning and refrigeration. That was all I knew about it until that time. I knew a few things about computers, thanks to my dad, who used to repair those hardware issues. So I had to log in and install a few softwares on it, which is which is what I think got me started into computers.
Wow, interesting. From mechanical ACs to getting into studying about mechanical stuff and then getting into IT. I'm sure it wouldn't have been easy coming from a different field and entering into IT. How was that the initial thing? You worked on Excel and all of it for about an year and uh, year or so. And after that, how did the journey start shaping?
Oh, it was glad you asked because it was very tough. It was immensely tough because I did not know the grammar for networking. I You need to know the grammar for any technology to understand it, to talk to that technology. Basically, technology is a logical thing, but you as a human need to talk to it to understand it better and to play with it and to make it do what you want it to do. Initially, I still remember my first day after that 1 year, 10 months. I moved into this technical team and I'm sitting there and I'm waiting for an incident. So we have incidents that we work on as an operations engineer in networking. An incident can be anything from an entire office is down. When I say down, I mean that the network connectivity is down. And from there to a user not being able to log on to Wi-Fi, or somebody trying to download a file from, say, an office in America to an office in India. So that connectivity, and if they're trying to download a file, if it is slow, so all these are termed as incidents. Uh, I got my first incident and I was not able to move my fingers. It was so nerve wracking because I knew that there were people watching me, watching my ticket, watching the logs that I put into the ticket. I mean, you have to document stuff when you work on incidents. You need to document it so that other people in your team, your manager, sees that and they make sure that you're on the right path when you start early in your career. So my hands are like shivering because I'm not sure. I know the commands, I know what I have to do, but it's a live box. If you mess up, you take down the network. So it was challenging, but I had very good mentors. I got a mentor before actually knowing the meaning of a mentor, so I was very lucky there. My mentor actually stood by me. They guided me towards resolving that first incident, and it took me about a month or two resolving incidents, and then it started becoming easier to handle that pressure. But I think even now, more than 13 years in the industry, I still feel that there are gaps where a formal education may or may not have filled. But it's one of those human tendencies that you actually go back to because you consider it as a disadvantage that you do not have that. But with time, I think we try to work around our weaknesses and stick to our strengths, and then get around the job.
Great. And when you say formal education, I think you are one of those persons whom I give a lot of example to my mentee, especially because I think you walked that path and you did not actually look at that formal education because a lot of them get caught up with engineering and then do like masters and then get into MBAs and still struggling in their career journeys. But in this 13 year, I think the way you have built your path, the career path, and the way you have grown, and then been in those companies which are like the dream companies for most of the people, right? And worked in different countries. I think it's really inspiring there. And coming back to your journey now, what is the role of a knock engineer? Like you typically started from service desk to a knock engineer. I know many of them, at least 10 years back when they started, this was the roles people started with. And today, some of them still starting in this kind of roles. What is the role of a knock engineer in networking?
So a NOC engineer is an engineer that monitors system. Allow me a minute here to explain as to what the landscape looks like in network engineering. You have the people who architect. They sit at the top. Like, they basically architect things. They know in 1 year, if I'm getting extra 100 employees, what sort of network should I have? And then you have the people designing. The architects take the architectural decision, but the designing as to what equipment to use and all that would be done by design. These two functions are actually pretty close, the architecture and the design. And then you have the network engineering as a whole, like the people who do all of it, the people who do architecture, design, operations, and all. And right at the starting is where you have the operations engineer, the NOC technician, so to speak. So you might have, or you may not have seen those huge monitors, 10 to 12 monitors, and you see all sorts of colors going around them. The NOC engineer is that person who's sitting there. Every networking person has been through that journey. And it's that NOC engineering journey that actually shapes a network engineer, because you deal with uh, hundreds of alarms every week. So when I say alarms, anything that goes down, your house may have an access point, the ISP that gives you the access point, the network connectivity that comes into it. Imagine that goes bad. We have a monitoring software that monitors it. And if that goes bad, we get an alarm. Alarm says, okay, this is red. Red is bad. Yellow is okay, there's a warning. And you have green, which is all good. Our better days in life are when everything is green, but that does not happen. That's the reason why we have a job in the first place, to deal with the reds and amber colors or orange colors, so to speak. So a NOC engineer monitors these three colors and then has to take a decision as to what he has to do, or he or she or they have to do in terms of resolving that. You can either resolve it then and there if you know what is happening around the alarm, if it is clearing or if it has cleared, or if you have the background behind it. Imagine a power goes out in a suburb somewhere, and the power restores, and you have an update, actually the power is restored, so there's no need for that alarm to be there, so you clear that off. If it comes back, you take a look into it. The second part of a NOC engineer is they're not able to resolve this, and they escalate it to the next level. That's where the next level of escalation comes into the picture. Who The NOC engineers in a lot of places do not have access to the actual devices because they're starting fresh. We do not want to give them access, and they may take down something. But most of them these days do. But when I started 13 years ago, we did not have access. We only had read access. When I say read, I can only monitor it, but I cannot alter anything into it. So the next level of engineers can actually alter stuff. They can log in and they can do stuff. So that's where they come into the picture. And then the NOC engineer spends their time in a shift. So a shift usually everywhere, especially in India when we started, was 8 hours. So you spend 8 hours, hand it off to the next engineer, then they do 8 hours, they hand it off to the next. So 8 is 24 hours. That's how we cover 365 days in a year. There is always somebody monitoring your network. So that's what, in a rough glance, what a NOC engineer does. A lot of things happen here. I pretty simplified it, but this is the structure of it. You monitor, you escalate, and then this is where your passion or your drive or your thrive comes in, right? Like, we talk a lot. Fatah and I were colleagues for a long time, and we've spoken about this for Lens at this time, that you can never help someone get up. They need to get up by themselves. They need to try that, right? It's the same concept here as well. In every aspect of life, for that matter. The NOC engine, the way you move from one ladder to another is your thrive and your drive. If they start doing certifications here, it might or may not help. But the thing that helps them is they tell, when they're escalating the issue, they tell the next guy, the next engineer, the next escalation point, that this is where I think the issue is, because of the knowledge that they have gathered either through books, blogs, videos, or whatever. And when you do that multiple times, you suddenly start getting recognized, and then you start getting promoted.
Right. I think I agree with your point where you have to take that ownership and it's more of you preparing yourself for the next level, right? When you
Right.
either you take it easy when you are at the knock engineer level, and then you just observe, monitor, and then you just keep moving that to the next level, or you take that opportunity where you are learning things and then you are discovering and finding out, okay, fine, what might be the root cause, and then probably giving that level of information to the next level, and that helps you. So how long were you in this role, and what helped you to move to the next role from there?
So I was in Pune for 2 years and 8 months, and I wanted to come back to Bangalore. Uh, I think a lot of credit goes to the people whom I was working with. So in IT, you're considered to be born with a golden spoon if you're from Bangalore. That's that's how it is. Uh, if you don't believe me, ask somebody who's come from various places in India to Bangalore. They'll all say the same thing, that they did not have to, and that we do not have to. The people, the Bangaloreans, do not have to leave their homes in order to go somewhere and earn. So my drive was to Bangalore was basically that. Like I wanted to go back to home and then enjoy being with family more than anything else. And I took that opportunity. I think this is advice that I give to a lot of people, that every role that you join, every company that you join in the initial 3 to 5 years, you'll always have someone that you look up to. That's your target initially. There will come a point, if you work hard enough, where you'll cross them, cross their expertise or cross their talent, right? That's where you need to decide, do I stick around or do I move? And that, most of the times, moving is the better option, but again, it depends upon people as to what their priorities are. For me, because I joined, that was my first company, you know this better than me, Fatah, that the initial companies that we joined were paying us peanuts, and we had to move. We did not have any choice to make our lives better. We took that decision in our hands, and we have to move. We had to move to get a better pay, and that's what I did. And I moved to Bangalore, worked with a company there, and then for a year and 2 months, and then that after that was uh, when God answered my prayers. It was only a dream to work in Cisco, because a lot of times you'll see companies, if you do not have a full-time degree, who do not want to interview you. I mean, forget about selecting you and making you join the company. They do not even entertain interviewing you, because I mean, they have a point in the sense that engineering makes you deal with pressure, and if you have not done engineering, at some point that pressure, the dealing with pressure thing strikes. I mean, that's the answer that I got from.
Let me interrupt you here, because I believe, again, a lot of us have our own beliefs and all of this, but I strongly believe it's not just the education, the formal education system, right? Because I know you come from a background where you never wanted to stick on with the formal education, and that's where you learned many things on your own. You have been that kind of a person. So it's never about the education, like be it engineering or be it diploma. I think it's that self drive, right? It's that burning desire and the passion that you carried always, and you carry even today for networking. I think that's the drive. But yes, I know many companies, the challenge, that entry point is always a challenge, right? And I'm sure like you face that. So what helped you to enter into Cisco, and how did you crack that?
Oh, it was really nerve wracking. I still remember. I did not eat anything until like 2 p.m. that day, and I went into the Cisco campus. I was completely amazed. It was my first luxury company type of an experience. I was pretty stoked. I saw the campus in Bangalore, and yeah, I love the coffee. The first instance was to get to the coffee machine and make a coffee yourself, and then I love the coffee during the day. Um, I had about 4 or 5 rounds that day. I still remember. The last one was the most interesting one, where you talk with managers, and then I still remember, still remember asking the hiring manager, "Are you sure you're gonna hire me?" Because I'm saying it now that I did not have a degree, because the amount of times that I was rejected from Cisco because of not having a degree was like 4 or 5 times. So I asked the hiring manager, "Are you sure that I'm going to get this job? Because I do not have a degree." And the hiring manager was very kind. This has happened to me a couple of times in my career. After I interview, after they see the skills that I bring in, they overrode their policies. This happened at two places. Cisco was one, wherein they overrode the policy for hiring a non-graduate. This happened to me, and this can happen to anyone if it has happened to me. So anybody who's watching this who does not have a formal education, a full-time degree, you can make it big, and you can make it very big with the kind of opportunities that you have. So yeah, Cisco happened in that way. Pretty very technical interview. Till date, the most technical interview I would say, because you had to read something called as RFCs. RFCs are people who actually invent a technology. So you had they gave that printout and they told me to explain it to them after I think 30 or 40 minutes, and then which I
Good.
had to do. So it was very challenging, but at the same time, I spent 3 years there, 3 complete years, uh, and I loved it. Loved every day of it. I think, Fatah, you know well, the kind of conversations we used to have
Yeah.
while traveling from our homes to office and back.
Right, right. I think that was again a dream company for me, Cisco, and one of the best companies we have ever worked for. So yeah, and can you expand on the role that you were playing? Because I know those were one of the few critical roles that you and your team were playing out there, and always on the toes. A lot of things going on in the space with the customers, with the technology, all of that. So can we like deep dive into like how was your role there and what kind of operations were you involved in? And I think that's the time you cracked CCIE as well. So
Right.
people want to know how do you do that, like, and how important is CCIE as an examination, or whether it is skills, what is it?
Right. So I was part of an organization that was called Customer Advocacy, and I think that's what it was called at that time. So customer advocacy is you are an advocate. You basically are acting lawyer for the customers that are paying you. So Cisco as a product is anywhere you see a network equipment in an office or in a bank, or even with your service providers, the 4G and 5G that you get, behind you will have some Cisco device. That's how Cisco's dominance is even today. It's uh, it's declining because of the other competitors that are coming up. But during our times, when I say our times, that is 10 years ago, uh, Cisco's dominance was huge. So you buy a Cisco product, you can install it in your home as an access point or as a router that you get from your service provider. So say you get an internet connection from Airtel in India, right? So Airtel gives you a box, the router. You can throw that away, put a Cisco router, and you'll get maybe 10 to 50 times better performance if you invest in that product. And if you have an issue, you will call up people. So the people that you call up were us. Certain technologies. So the way we discrete the sort of classify the technologies and then divide them according to the teams. So the team that I was part of was service provider and routing protocols. So that's the team that handles a lot with service providers. So service providers are Airtel, Geo, Vodafone. All of these are service providers. They may or may not use Cisco, but this is the example of what a service provider is. So we used to get cases across the globe, and then we used to handle them, and it was a pretty critical role. I still remember issues from healthcare sector from all over the globe, and that those were the issues that I actually used to get scared. The other issues were like I was able to manage my emotions, but healthcare is where people's lives are dependent upon whatever you do. I still remember a case where they had to send a scan copy from somewhere to somewhere because of some doctors had to send a report, and it was dependent on the network, whatever technology they were using during the time, and they involve you during with a phone call, and then you get on the phone line, and then you see their screen, they share their screen, and then you see them and troubleshoot. We were able to fix it. in a quicker time, but the kind of emotions that run through during that time, the handling operations was pretty huge. But they shape you at the same time. They shape your communication skills. They shape your people management skills. As a customer advocate, you can never blame the customer, because your job is to is to
Yeah.
represent the customer, not to blame the customer.
So let me pause you here. And so this was more of a role like a network engineer, or what you can call it, like in the generic terms, if people can recognize this.
There's no term for this because we used to do a lot of things. But if you're wanting to name something for this role, I would say network operations engineer would be the closest.
Okay. And can you help us understand a little bit about the layout, right? How these things are like formed? I know it's a very basic question, but then coming from the you have been talking about access points, right? Coming from the local area network and getting into the networks, and where are these protocols placed out there? Like, how does the stack look like? Because we have been hearing a lot about TCPIP, right? Routing protocols. Maybe a brief overview of that, and then we will see like what are the roles that fit in that particular stack.
Okay, that's an interesting question. Let me try answering that. So when you type google.com in your browser, there's something that happens, right? The stack is huge. Every component when you type google.com is a separate ocean in itself. One of those oceans is the networking part, wherein we type google.com. So the stack goes like something like this. You have a NIC card on your computer if you're wired to the internet. That NIC card takes you to your actual local router, right? The local router by the ISP. That ISP would have a cable to their own equipment, right? And their ISPs will have their own mesh of equipments across the country. When they try to connect to something in the US, you'll have something called as a transatlantic cable, which is an undersea cable. So at the end of the day, it's all about cables, right? That's what networking is. You have Wi-Fi, but when you're talking about the actual internet, it's multiple routers and switches, networking equipment which is connected through wires. Those wires can be as simple as the ones which you lay from your laptop to the router, and as well as the ones which you lay under the ocean. I'll briefly talk about one of the incidents that we saw in early 2010s, right, in Vietnam, where a shark bit the undersea cable, and we had an internet outage, because the shark bit the cable and the cable was into pieces. So the cable that they lay under the sea is actually protected with multiple layers, and if you see that cabling technology itself, it varies. Let me get back to what I was saying. So the stack goes from your laptop until that point, right? So that's the cabling part. Now you say, I don't like wires, I want to get into Wi-Fi, right? So Wi-Fi is basically so your computer again has a hardware that supports Wi-Fi. That's how you're able to discover the SSIDs, the names that you give to your local network. Maybe you name it something funny, or you name it with your name at your home, and then that's where you connect to. That's again your hardware, but which is sending a Bluetooth signal or a Wi-Fi signal, right? In this case, a Wi-Fi signal, and then you connect to it. So now let me talk about the roles that get into this picture, right? Let me talk about enterprise, because a home network would be pretty simple and pretty boring. But an enterprise has a lot of things that they need to be aware about. The first of the things is cyber security, right? Let me start from the demon in the room, because cybersecurity is a hot topic all the time. So cybersecurity, what do people do in cybersecurity, right? So there are people who hack your system and make money. So their job is to identify what the flaws are in your security system and then block those. Now, there was a person that told me not too long ago, when you're dealing with highly motivated people that want to destroy a network, you can only push them to a certain limit. How long do you push them is the role of network security. How long do you pause their attack? right?
Mm.
That's the role of network security. Network security is never going to be like, I'm going to just clear out everything, every hacker in the world. You can never do that. When you have a team of highly motivated, talented hackers who want to destroy you, you can just pause that for a certain amount with your skills and with your knowledge and with the equipments that you have and technologies that you have available today. That's the network security part. Then you have people who deal with DNS. Now, this is an interesting concept because DNS is a pretty big topic. I'm pretty sure people will remember not too long ago, a couple of weeks, 3 weeks ago, Facebook was down, right? Facebook,
Right.
WhatsApp, and so what happened there? So what happened there? That's the part of a part of a network engineer, right? That was basically DNS. So DNS, and we have the protocol that rules the internet, right? The protocol with which protocol is what? Protocol is nothing but a set of rules. So imagine Fatah is in India and I'm in Singapore, right? So the way we talk is through a set of rules. That rule is named as BGP, which is a border gateway protocol. That's the protocol that rules the internet. That's how we both are communicating on this conversation, and that's how your viewers are listening to you, right? That's the protocol that does it. So DNS and BGP were the issues which Facebook sort of suffered the outage on. So DNS is a different part in the system. So when you type google.com, actually what happens is that gets converted into a digit, an integer, so to speak, and that integer is called as an IP address. That part is what DNS plays. That conversion of your name into an IP address, conversion of the name google.com into 1.1.1.1, which is an IP address, which is an integer, right? That's the part where DNS comes into. So DNS has specific engineers who target that specialization. And this is something which I would like to call it out now. The technology is very vast. You'll never be able to cover it all. You stick to a niche, you stick to a specialization, and you then move forward. At the same time, you try to gather a few pieces here and there to build that thing that we call it as T-shaped skill set. So T-shaped skill set is you're very good in one, which is the depth, which is the vertical line in the T. The horizontal line in the T is where your breadth of technologies comes into the picture. So the breadth can be anything from programming, can be anything from systems. So, like a system administrator, Fatah was one. For people who are not aware, Fatah was a very good systems administrator for a long time for Red Hat. I mean, he was specializing in Red Hat technologies. And then you move and start picking. Public speaking was also one of them, which I rate because I've spent enough effort trying to learn public speaking. But that's the T-shaped skill set which DNS people do. So you have the cybersecurity, you have the DNS, and then you have people who actually are the ISP engineers, right? So they are the people who control the internet the way it has to work. So if you are facing an issue tomorrow for something that okay, so let me put it in this way: you're trying to reach Facebook server. So Facebook has to tell, in order to reach me, you follow this route. So it's as simple as saying, in order to get from point A to point B in your city, what is the shortest route that you're going to follow? That's how Facebook will instruct. So imagine Muddasir, I open my own company, Muddasir.com, and I say, okay, for Facebook, you don't go to Facebook, you come to me. So there are people who are preventing even this. So this is called as prefix hijacking, or just hijacking their traffic to your servers. We
Okay.
saw one of these
So
incidents in Pakistan where they attracted YouTube's traffic and everything was down.
yeah, so we'll not get into deep into like the Facebook hijacking and all of
Right.
that because it goes deep into technology. But I want to like remind the audience about one thing that was profound that Mudassir spoke about here. In any technology or in any field, I think that T shape is very important, right? The skill sets that you develop, right? In that T shape, basically the vertical one is one skill which you master, right? And you get the in depth of that skill, and you still need to have a lot of other skills that you learn. And I think we have seen a lot of examples around where people always worked on that vertical line, right, and mastered only one skill. And typically when you don't learn the other skills which are required to grow in the organization, that is when you fail. And one of the best examples would be where people were working on the systems or the tools or the products which were going like outdated. Right, today technology is changing all the time, right? And when you stay like stick to only that and then keep going in deep and then don't acquire the other skills, that's when people fail. But yeah, coming back to the roles now, right? So that's more of a network engineer role, right? And network operations engineer, basically what you were playing as a support or the customer advocacy role in Cisco. And you were working more on routers and switches. Now, Mudassir, even in the networking world, we saw a huge shift happening, right? Where the physical networks were now replaced with the virtual networks. Some of the big companies were playing it big because virtualization came into place. Now, how has that shaped the networking world, and how has opportunities grown in this field now?
So opportunities have, I wouldn't say grown or I wouldn't say shrunk, but they're somehow similar with what from past decade that we are seeing. And one of the major reasons to that is there are not a lot of people that want to get into networking because okay, so let me rephrase it in this way. When you talk about infrastructure, nobody cares about infrastructure until it is down. Your
Hmm.
internet is working, you're least bothered about what your router is and what it is doing and what type of cable you're using or what type of Wi-Fi you have. When it is down, you start investing time. That's the same methodology, that's the same mindset that a lot of people still have. So network engineering shifted in 2013, if I remember very correctly. I was one of those people who was wanting to specialize in the stuff that I was doing, and then suddenly I saw a drift. Drift was that people telling me that you're on the wrong path, and then you need to learn programming. And we have a new paradigm that is coming into network engineering, which is called as software-defined networking. That was a very vague term even now. I mean, it was very vague then. It's vague even now because everybody has their own definition of what a software-defined network is. But anyway, in IT, if you're getting into IT, if you are in IT, you might very well know that this industry runs on hype. Anybody can create a hype around any technology, and people will run behind it without thinking enough if that is something which we want or not. So 2013, it is when programming sort of was introduced to me. I knew nothing about programming then, and it was pretty difficult during that time. And it was also 2014 was when I think I first heard the term IoT, and then Internet of Things. That is where Amazon Alexa, Google Home, and all those devices came into the picture. Uh, so the networking landscape sort of shifted from, okay, so this is how we used to do things. If you tell me that tomorrow there's a new office or a new floor in the building that is going to come up, I as in the network people used to get there, install an actual physical switch, and manually by hand configure stuff. 2013, 2014 was when people said, we have had enough of this manual stuff. We want to do this programmatically because there are too many errors. Ask any network person, 90% of the issues are caused by people actually doing the changes. You do a change trying to modify something, and that leads to an outage. There are a lot of tools today. A lot of companies have built their startups to solve this problem. Like, how can you verify your change? So programming started then, that people wanted, they fed up with doing manual stuff and they wanted to do it programmatically. And that's where we were sort of forced to learn, because until that point, I had a lot of people who came from computer science background who were hesitant to get into programming. And I still remember their words. They told me that the reason why they got into computer networking was not to deal with code, because networking
Programming.
was not coding, right? And or
Yeah.
programming for that matter. And that's the shift that happened. A lot of people became pretty famous, pretty wealthy. So if you were a network engineer then who knew something about programming, the amount of job offers people got were crazy, because it was all the hype around network automation, and that was their strength, knowing to code, and they were able to know what the networking is. So when they combined both of these, that's when they became superstars. So anyway, this happened then, and then I had a chance to move out of India in 2015 to Amazon. That was again another interesting story in my life, which took about a year from my first round to actually getting into the company. I mean, actually working as an engineer there, network engineer there, and that's when uh, I learned programming and coding, and that and for people who are seeing this, I don't say this. Okay, all the opinions that I'm sharing are my personal opinions, right? They do not represent the previous or employers or the current employer for that matter. But it's all about mindset. The day you say that this is all about my mindset, that the roadblock for me is actually my mindset, you will grow. And that's what happened to me in Dublin. Uh, that mindset changed because of the people I was working with, and I was able to learn a few things. And I very quickly saw how they changed my perspective on handling things. I considered everything that was manual as boring, and try to do stuff with some sort of a program. And I say this with pride, that when I learn something, I consider myself as somebody who knows nothing about it. So the person I'm going to reach out to help for, whatever they say, they might even abuse me for that matter. I take it as a compliment and then I come back. So that's the mindset for freshers who want to get into networking. That the
Yeah.
mindset always has to be appreciative of the feedback, because they do not get anything for mentoring you for that
Right,
matter, right?
right.
So
I completely agree with you. Like the mindset is very important, and I think that is one of the key criteria that helped you. We will get into deep of that as well, like the Amazon cracking into the Amazon and all of that as a networking engineer. But I think the other thing here is, apart from mindset, is you also are a person whom I have seen, like you don't only learn things, you implement them then immediately, right? So I think that has been one of the strengths. So how important is in networking field that you practice, you do things, and then you implement rather than you keep learning? Because I know a lot of people do CCIEs, they do next level of certifications in different organizations, like Juniper has its own and all of that, but still continue to struggle. So
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 this
what
is
according to you is important here?
so this is something I learned in Cisco. I met a friend who's still a very close friend of mine. Uh, so this is what happens if you act like a sponge, you'll keep absorbing knowledge, right? A sponge absorbs water, right? So when you squeeze a sponge, what happens? It drains the water. That's what happens with knowledge as well. If your mind, or if your mindset, or if you as a person are like a sponge. So I saw this with my colleague then, but now a very good friend, who whenever once wanted to learn something was always doing the lab first and then studying the theory, which was very interesting to me, because I was always the other type of a guy, and I changed myself completely after seeing that, because the person whom I'm talking about was very technical, whom I follow very closely, very inspired by him. So that's how I shifted that mentality into that. For the people who, I mean, I'm no one to suggest as to what is wrong in their roadmap, the reason why they're not growing. But one of the things that I've seen lately is not going back to basics. That is one of those. I was actually recently watching a YouTube lecture on programming from a professor from IIT Madras. Um he told this concept is like one of those things in life that you have to do every day, like brushing your teeth, for example, right? So there are always these concepts in your job. How well do you know them? Like logging on to a device and doing something is something which we always do, but how many engineers actually know what happens when you try to log in? What protocols are we using? What type of authentication happens then? So once you start looking into the basics of what you're doing in your day, then you can advance on that and then move ahead. And to the second point that you talked about, putting it into action, it is something that I even struggle today. I'm still finding out things, ways, and methods to do. I recently shared this with you that I started meditating quite a bit from last year after the pandemic hit. That has been helping me so far. to stay consistent with some of the methods. But it's always that the passion, the confidence, everything gets built on the results that you get. There's this there will never come a day where you're motivated to do something. It's the results, it's the process that you do today that will bring in a result, and that result builds the confidence. So it's the other way around. So this is something which I learned from a fitness trainer, who says people consider motivation, results and action. Oh, no, sorry, motivation, action, and results, right? So you consider that as a circle. But actually, it is the way it is action, results, and motivation. So the first point is action.
Action.
So these things might sound very fake, that they did to me. I'll be very honest, a few years ago. But you start repeating these things to yourself, these small things like, where does motivation come into that circle, and what do you want to do with your life, and how do you want to proceed. I think you start seeing a different you every single day, and within no time you start seeing that promotion coming in and cracking that next interview. But it will always go back to the basics, the thing that you are doing most. Do you know that well enough, even before getting on to the extra advanced stuff? That's what I did. That's what worked for me, and that's what I would like to share.
And what skills helped you to crack that code in Amazon? I know like a lot of people have Amazon as their dream company as well, right? So you moving from one big company to another big company, right? And you were good at networks, you knew routing, switching, and all of that, right? And then you moved into Amazon. Like what helped you? Like what kind of skills helped you to reach there?
Um, Reach from Cisco to Amazon, you mean?
Yeah, in a
Uh,
different role because you didn't go in the same role, right? You moved into a
yeah, yeah,
different
yeah.
role in Amazon. The roles were different, the kind of responsibilities were different there. So you moved in there. So what helped you? Like what kind of skills?
So the first was interpersonal skills. That's what my manager told, the hiring manager in Amazon. That's the first feedback that I got. That the interpersonal skills were were pretty important to the interview that I gave. And routing protocols was my strength. Still my strength. I say it with a smile because I've studied that so much that it has become a part of me. For people who are close to me, will always know me by sharing something about the other, about routing protocols. That's how mad I was, and I'm still am with the technology that I work on. And apart from that, it was cloud skills, because okay, before I say cloud skills, I would say the company that you interview for, how well do you know that company, is the question that you will always get. That's how you get differentiated in the market. How well do you know the company that you're getting into? So I studied a little bit of cloud before entering Amazon, and I had a very good friend who went there before me. And okay, so the zeroth skill is have a referral. The zeroth skill is build that contact, build that network. That's the point zero is that. After that is whatever I just said, and a little bit of programming. But I would go back and reframe my entire thing to just one point: is have that network, have that interpersonal skills, have those friends that are willing to refer you. Some get paid for your referrals, some do not. But what do they actually think of you if you were to join their team? Would they consider you as a add-on, or would they consider you as a pain in their team? So having that thing, for me, I think I would say that having that contact helped a lot.
Yeah, I would like completely agree with you here, right? On top of all the skills, computer networking skills, on top of all that is people networking skills. And after a certain point of time in your career, it's all about whom you know, right? So that they can refer you, they can recommend you, and you get that opportunity to at least give that interview, right? That's your entry point, and then you prove your skills. A lot of people get busy in developing skills, right, the technology skills, and they never get that opportunity, so never make it big in their careers. I think this is a very profound thing that people need to know. Now if somebody wants to shape their career into networking, Mudassir, you have like moved from knock engineer to different levels, and today you are playing a big role again in a big organization out there. what are the steps that you would tell them, and what is the roadmap that they can follow so that they can grow fast in their career growth in the networking field?
Right. So you ask this as a fresher, or do you ask this as an experienced person?
Anybody who's starting as a fresher in networking, maybe starting with CCNA and then joining in a company as a network engineer, right? What are the key skills you think, and how they can actually walk up in this particular career ladder in networking?
Right. The first thing is never be scared to take on that issue or that project that nobody wants to take on. That's where you get highlighted. The more you do that, the better you get. I'm saying this as a person who was not taking this, thinking that I'll mess up and I'll lose my job. But I saw people in front of me who took it and are at great places today. And it's that one quality that you need to develop. The first thing is, what are those thorns that you have in your company, the projects that you're seeing, and why are people running away from that? It does not mean that you take all the complicated projects. You have to always balance between how you want to live your life. I mean, the work life balance and integration always comes into the picture, but always take on those things. It starts small, but focus on those skills. The second
You
point
can, you can
again.
talk about the mix of technology and also the soft skills part that you're talking here. It
Yeah,
can be
sure.
both of it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, in these scenarios, the way you build that trust is through your interpersonal skills. Sign up for courses. Sign up for courses that build that confidence. Sign up for public speaking courses. Talk to people that speak better than you. What is making them speak better? Are they pausing? Are they pausing enough? Is the rate of speech better? Is the pronunciation better? What is the writing like? You need to be a very good writer in order to get promoted. The better notes you write, the better projects you complete and you write the note about the project, the more you get recognized, because the more people are reading that. After that, it's mostly about, after you build that skill about the interpersonal, it's all about technicality. How good are you with ambiguity? Because, okay, so this is something that reminds me that I wanted to share. Good thing that you strike the point. For people coming from India, when I went outside of India and started working, one of the problems that I saw in me was waiting for instructions. In India, the way we work is you have somebody who tells you exactly what you need to do in order to get that completed. People do this, they complete this, they do this for years and years, and they wait for promotion. Your promotion can never come when you follow instructions. Your promotion only comes when you actually dive into ambiguity, where there are no clear instructions as to what you need to do, and then you get into that pool, and then you start swimming with ambiguity. You start figuring out things. This is a skill I'm still developing, and I've spent immense amount of effort trying to talk to people, trying to sign up courses, and trying to actually interact with I think tens of people now, the senior engineers that I've worked with, as to how do you deal with ambiguity. And the only answer I get is, work on one piece at a time. That's the only advice that I've got until now. When you have a huge a mountain to cross, you just chip away one piece at a time. That's the same mentality that ambiguity follows. So, interpersonal skills, and what is the level of ambiguity that you're working on? Are you working on something which is straightforward that anybody can do? There's this person called Naval Ravikant. He's an investor in the US. He actually says this in one of his talks. Is basically, do not wait for those instructions, right? Get your hat on and then you move forward with it, whatever you feel like is the right step. And then if you have supportive managers and colleagues, then they'll support you and then you'll move forward. But it'll again go back to the same point, that how comfortable are you with ambiguity? I am still not. I am pretty okay with saying it, but I'm still developing the skill, and you should too. In India, especially, uh, I mean, don't expect a promotion just by doing what you're doing. That's never going to come, because 10 people can do it. What is the specific thing that you have that nobody else has? What is that? And do you have an answer to that? If you do not, then you need to know. what is that skill that you bring to the table that makes you special. So that's that. Those two things I think should suffice a lot of people trying to do this. And I practice this myself, so I'm sharing it as a personal experience, personal opinion. Rest is up to you. It always, when you're hearing people talk stuff that has worked for you, always take it with a salt of grain. It might have worked for them, it might not work for you, but you will never know until you try it. So give it a shot.
Right. And how much of practice is required in this field of networking? Because you are always like in the field, I mean, on the networks, and then there are situations when networks go down and all of that. So, what kind of troubleshooting skills should somebody have? What kind of configuration skills should somebody have? And what kind of technology skills in terms of networks? Like if somebody has to grow from a NOC engineer and then reach to some place like a network architect, right? What are the technology skills that somebody has to acquire along with this troubleshooting and all of that?
This will completely vary from company to company. It will depend upon the engineer's ability at the first place and if they want to grow in the same company or in a different company. If you're asking me to give a structured path, I would just say start with TCPIP. That's something which I learned very late in my career and I regret it even today. I should have started with TCPIP. So there's this author called Richard Stevens who has this book called TCPIP Illustrated. There are two volumes, volume 1 and 2. So every engineer needs to go there. Every network engineer needs to read those books. I read it very late, but I read a few chapters, not all of it. After that, it's about, so let me talk about first about growing inside the company, right? So inside the company, talk to somebody who's there at that position. You need to build that contact. How do you do that? There's no one answer to that. You either go on a coffee or you either tag along on a project. That's how you build that connection. Ask them what are the skills that they work on. What is a day in the life? Don't ask a day in the life. Ask a week in the life of that person because every day is changing, right? A week might have some sort of pattern. What does a week look like? Note down the skills that you have in one line. This I think I learned this from Fatah, so it might be like repeating what he has taught me. I'll list down the skills that you have and list down the skills that they listed in another column. Compare, work on the skills that you're missing. That's the part, the easiest part to grow inside the company, right? The the thing that outside the company is what is the market saying? Twitter is a great place to be on if you're on social media to see as to what the skills are in the market and what those people are talking about. LinkedIn is also another great place, but LinkedIn is more and so like the authenticity of LinkedIn is somewhat questionable today because people write anything for that matter there. But Twitter has more genuine conversations around this. Uh, and then after that TCP/IP thing that I said, the closest that you can get recognized easily outside is what are the certifications that are in demand today. So CCIE was when we were doing it. Today, is CCIE really something that people ask? No. Is automation something people ask? Definitely yes. So that's where you need to go. That's how you jot down where you need to go from a company to another company. Then you build the skills. Cloud. Oh, I missed I missed the biggest player. Cloud is that skill that is differentiating network engineers today. So a lot of people are designing clouds, but they don't know how to network clouds, how to basically form the network connection from say AWS to Google Cloud or AWS to Azure. So those are the few things that you can take note of. That should do for now.
Great. I think we did discuss a lot of things, and I believe in every technology, be it networks or be it softwares and all of that, the underlying philosophy would still remain the same. Whatever we have discussed about, be it the T shape where you are like mastering one skill, or be it taking the entire ownership, or be it networking with people, right, and then getting those opportunities, or understanding the skills of the people whom you where you want to reach, right? So I think underlying things would still be the same, but yeah, I think a lot of key messages that we have got from this conversation today, and understanding about your role and how you have moved from one level to the other and made it in some big companies, and then got to a place wherever you are, right? And wishing you more success, Mudassir, and thanks for being here and sharing a lot of insights about networks. But before we close this conversation for the day, anything that you want to share at the end of a message, at the end as a message?
Yeah, sure. So the three P's that I follow, which I would like to share, and I share this to a lot of people. So you have package, profile, and place. So you will always compromise between these three in the initial years. I mean, for a lot of years. So you always have to pick either one or two. You can't pick all the three. Profile, package, and the place. Leave the one which is not important to you and hold on to the other two. That pays its dividends multifold. That's the only advice.
Great. And I think that's where you played between the priorities and you were able to be in different countries, be it Australia or be it like in Singapore today, right? So thanks for that wonderful advice. And I think it's all about the fourth P as well. I would want to add here is the priorities, right?
Okay.
What is your priority in your life? And based on that, choose that piece, right? And this is wonderful. So thank you for that wonderful piece of advice again. And thank you for being here. And thanks to all the audiences who have been here and listening to us and listening to this entire conversation. And especially Suresh, again from Suresh Royala from Cisco, has been watching this and he's loved this conversation. Right, Vishal Katkar has been watching this and he's saying that I can resonate with you, Mudassir, because he comes from the networking field. Right, so thank you guys for appreciating and being here, and for all of those who will watch us later, and then I'm sure like you will get a lot of value add from this particular conversation. So thank you for watching us at your own time. And yes, stay tuned because we are going to come with more industry experts who will be sharing their knowledge, their experiences, their failures and success, so that you can build that career path and you can build your dream career. So thank you once again, Mudassir, and thanks everyone for watching us.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah, thank you and good night.